My sister-in-law is getting married next month, and she asked me if I could make a few items for the reception. And since my son's gonna be the ring bearer, I had to hook him up with a nice box for the special day. But let's get started on the candlestick holders. So once I had my 8/4 walnut milled down to 1 3/4 of an inch, I ripped down the boards to 1 3/4 of an inch sticks at the table saw. This gives me perfectly square and even faces to work off. But first I needed to square off the ends of my boards. Then I set up my crosscut sled using the blank to set the width of my stop block. Doing this ensures that my trimmed down parts will be perfect 1 3/4 inch cubes. From there I just moved the stop over 1 inch and cut the medium sized blocks, and then moved the stop block again by 1 inch to cut the larger ones. Next, I needed to make a reference fence for my drill press. I cut out some small blocks of 3/4 inch ply and marked out the location on my sacrificial table. Then I used Starbond CA glue to attach the blocks, aligning them to the previously made marks. And if you're enjoying this video, give it a like. Both myself and the YouTube gods greatly appreciate it. With the table reattached to my drill press, I used a 7/8 Forstner bit to drill out the holes for the candlestick ferrules, which are the inserts that actually hold the candle. You want these holes to be about 7/8 of an inch deep to make room for the candlestick base. One note here, if you don't own a drill press, you could drill these with a hand drill. Just use a guide block and a vise to help keep the drill at 90 degrees. From there it was on to the card holders, which are great for photos, recipe cards, table numbers, and any number of things. Just make sure that you make the base large enough that it won't topple over like I do when I step on a Lego. I marked a 1 inch line from the end of my 3/4 by 2 inch board and used a pull saw to cut a 3/8 inch deep cut. Now, I wanted these to have a little bit of a lean to them, so this dovetail jig from Jonathan Katz Moses worked out perfectly. If you don't have one of these jigs, you can just make one at the table saw by tilting your blade to 83 degrees. From there it was back to the crosscut sled to cut out the 2 inch square. Then it was just rinse and repeat. When you get to the end, you can use the end of your pencil to hold down your piece while you cut it out at the table saw. Next up was a ring box. I decided to have a little fun with this one and make it a sliding dovetail for the top and bottom. The only problem is I've never made a sliding dovetail box before, so I just had to wing it. Pun intended. So once my material was milled down to 1 7/8 inches, I trimmed out a block that was 4 inches in length and 2 inches in width. From there I ripped the chunk in half in one foul swoop. Okay, no more bird puns. Unless you got a good one, let me know in the comments. I then ran the boards through my drum sander just to help with the sanding process. Then I finished sanding the freshly cut faces at the bench. And I feel it's important to note here that using a thin blade like the bandsaw helps keep a consistent grain pattern across the box. Next I could make a reference board from some scrap to help set up the router table. About 85% of my viewers are not subscribed, so please consider subscribing. I really appreciate the support. Next I clamped the reference board to the router table and used it to align the fence. And to cut the dovetail, I'm using an 8-degree dovetail bit. Then I set the blade height to just under the depth of my bit and hogged out the material for my tail, leaving a minimal amount to remove at the router table. And back at the router table, I carefully cut the tail out. I did end up adding a sacrificial fence here to help guide the block against the fence. Any excess material was easily removed with a chisel. Using my tail block as a guide, I set the height for the table saw blade, then removed all the material between my pins. Make sure that you use a flat bottomed blade for these cuts or you'll end up with a ton of grooves in the top of your box. Then I set the cut up at the router table, this time cutting left to right as the bit is cutting on the inner portion of the wood. I also added a feather board to help keep the piece against the fence during the cut. I did a little sanding to help the dovetail slide smoothly, then trimmed about a 1/16 of an inch off each end of the box. Speaking of keeping things smooth, I added an 1/8 inch round over to all the edges before sanding the box to 220. Next I turned to the drill press to add 2 1-inch relief holes to hold the rings in place. Just make sure you clamp it to your table when you do so it doesn't fly across the shop like a bird. Okay, now I'm done. While we're at the drill press, check out the propagation station build linked in the card above. They also make a great gift. From there, I added a drop of CA glue to fill in the impression left by the tip of the Forstner bit, and sanded the glue flush to the bottom. Then I masked off the box with blue painter's tape and cut out the circles before adding a coat of shellac to the ring holders. Doing this seals in the area for the flocking adhesive. After about 12 hours, I painted in the flocking adhesive and liberally applied the flocking. When you think you have enough, go ahead and add some more. You can get back what doesn't stick once everything is dried for about 12 hours. To apply the flocking, you can use a bottle like this one, or just dump the flocking onto the adhesive with a spoon. The main advantage of doing it this way is that you ensure flocking is applied to all the places there is adhesive. Then I sanded everything to 220. I clamped all my blocks together, which really sped up the sanding process. For the finish, I'm using penetrating oil. The penetrating oil protects the pieces and brings out the natural warmth of the walnut. I'll have links to all these items in the description. Once I had 2 coats applied, I added the candle ferrules. Now these gifts are ready for packaging. Subscribe for more woodworking projects and watch this video next. I'll see you next time.